What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Noah Gray here, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Josh's channel and check out showmefootball.com for more.
What is up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com. I wanted to do a live Q&A tonight, coming up on Super Bowl 57. It's been a while since I've done like a little one-on-one live stream with you guys where I take your questions and your comments. So that's what tonight is going to be about. And we're just going to talk Chiefs, and I have a lot that I want to talk about. So as I am talking about stuff, I will be reading your guys' comments and questions, and I'll base a lot of the conversation off that because tonight is about you guys. Just make sure if you have anything you want to say, you leave it in the comments. I will get to it, I promise. And if you're feeling generous, you can send in a super chat because that always helps. And then if you really want to help out, just make sure you like and share because that helps me get seen and that helps me get found. But here's what I wanted to start with today. So I was listening to, I'm a huge listener to 610 Sports Radio in Kansas City. And today they had a couple guests on from the Philadelphia side to get some of their perspective of this game. And the Philadelphia side is getting very cocky with things. For some reason, they're treating the Philadelphia Eagles as if they are the 85 Bears or the 2007 Patriots. Like they're just this vastly superior roster. Like all week, there's been this narrative that I've been seeing. I've been consuming a lot of media this week covering this game, leading up to this game. And one thing that I've been able to take away from a lot of the media that I've consumed is that people feel like the Eagles have this vastly superior roster. And to me, that is just ridiculous. Like, are we acting like the Kansas City Chiefs are devoid of talent? People are acting like Patrick Mahomes just dragged this roster to the Super Bowl like LeBron James did with the Cleveland Cavaliers in 2018. Are we forgetting that the Kansas City Chiefs were tied for the most Pro Bowlers this year and have all pros up and down the board? Creed Humphrey, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones, and they got studs all over. There's a lot of Eagles media that I feel like they don't know the Chiefs roster. Like they don't understand how good some of these rookies have been, like Trent McDuffie, like Jalen Watson, guys like that. But yeah, guys, it's insane to me how people are acting like the Eagles are this vastly superior roster. And the other thing that I feel like a lot of people aren't acknowledging is that the Kansas City Chiefs are the far more experienced team in this type of game. They have much more experience. Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, this is their third Super Bowl together. Steve Spagnuolo, he's on track to win his fourth Super Bowl as a defensive coordinator. A lot of these guys, they've been here before. They've done this. Travis Kelce, Chris Jones. If you look over at the Philadelphia Eagles side, this is a much different core than that group that won the Super Bowl in 2017. It's a different head coach. It's a different starting quarterback. It's a different group of receivers. It's a totally different secondary. It's a different defensive line. This isn't the same Eagles team that won the Super Bowl in 2017. Now, I'm not saying that in a bad way because the Eagles are still obviously a very good team. I'm not trying to discredit them at all. It's just a different team than the one that won in 2017. But one of the guests that my guy Carrington Harrison had on 610 Sports Radio today, his name was Vince Quinn. And he was by far the cockiest member of the Eagles media that I've heard talk about this game all week. Here's some of the quotes that he gave CDOT on 610 Sports Radio, The Drive today. So there was a point in the segment where Carrington says, give me the coaching quarterback that are superior. That team is going to win 8 times out of 10. And then Philadelphia's Vince Quinn goes, well, I think this is going to be one of those as well, implying that Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts are the better quarterback duo, the better quarterback coach duo, which is just insane to me because what has Jalen Hurts done in this league? He's a good quarterback. He's in the running for MVP this year. Good for him. He's not Patrick Mahomes. Nick Sirianni, he's never been in this position before. He's not Andy Reid. Andy Reid has been to 4 straight AFC Championship games with 2 different teams, including the Eagles. He's been to 5 straight with the Kansas City Chiefs. This is his 3rd Super Bowl appearance in 4 years. It's just not even close. I don't know why you would suggest something like that. And then some of the other quotes from him today. The The Eagles played a weak schedule this season, but so did the Chiefs. I'm sorry. The Kansas City Chiefs played the Buffalo Bills, the Cincinnati Bengals, the San Francisco 49ers, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Los Angeles Chargers. Who did the Philadelphia Eagles face this year that came even close to any of those teams? Dak Prescott and the Cowboys, Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. And when the Eagles played them, they both put up 30 points or more. The Eagles just haven't faced a lot of great teams this year. Here's another quote. Philadelphia is already getting fitted for their second ring. Okay, yeah, we'll see about that. This has the makings of another Tampa Bay Buccaneers 2020 Super Bowl. I understand this Eagles defensive line is very good. It's elite, actually. You know, they led the league in sacks this year with 70, which is just an unheard of number. But this Kansas City Chiefs team is just way too good for this to be another 2020 Super Bowl. This Kansas City Chiefs team has a much better offensive line than they had in the 2020 Super Bowl. So how could you say this is going to be like the 2020 Super Bowl? The 2020 Super Bowl was one of the worst offensive line performances in Super Bowl history. I don't foresee that happening again in Super Bowl 57. The Kansas City Chiefs have one of the best interior threes in the league with Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith. Are their tackles suspect? Sure, but I'm still taking Orlando Brown and Andrew Wiley over Mike Remmers and Andrew Wiley from the 2020 Super Bowl. And I think this Chiefs team is going to be a lot better prepared for this game. I think they're accounting for that Eagles pass rush. They know what it's capable of. They're going to game plan things like quick passes to try and neutralize the effect of the Eagles defensive line. This team is just way too good. I can count on one hand how many times Patrick Mahomes has been blown out in his career. I don't see him getting blown out in this game. The Chiefs are just too good. They're too good of a team. And one more reason I'm really confident about the Chiefs in this game is because if you guys can think back to that 2020 Super Bowl against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, during that regular season, the Kansas City Chiefs cruised through the regular season. They were dominant. They won 14 games. In the playoffs, you know, there was that scare against the Browns when Mahomes went down with an injury, but they beat the Browns, whooped Buffalo in the AFC Championship. And they didn't really face adversity all year long. And then they got to the Super Bowl versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And when they got punched in the mouth early, they didn't know how to respond. I think this Philadelphia Eagles team hasn't faced a lot of adversity this year. Yeah, Jalen Hurts went out for a couple of games, but the division wasn't in question. You know, they were still going to be the 1 seed. And they just gave him his rest for a couple of weeks, and that team was fine. This year, the Kansas City Chiefs, they saw Mahomes get injured in the Jaguars game with a high ankle sprain, and they gutted out 2 really good wins against the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Cincinnati Bengals. They have went through adversity this year. To me, the Eagles have led by a very wide margin in most of their games. They're outscoring their playoff opponents by a crazy margin in this postseason. They haven't faced adversity. So if the Chiefs go out there and punch them in the mouth and go up 10-0 early, I'll be curious to see how the Eagles respond, if they'll be able to take that, because they haven't really played from behind this year very much. And a lot of it is due to their weak schedule. And they also had really a cakewalk to the Super Bowl. I mean, they faced Daniel Jones and the Giants in the divisional round. That was an easy opponent. They faced Josh Johnson, the 4th string quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. There was nothing the Niners could do in that game with Josh Johnson at quarterback. And that's as easy of a path you'll get to the Super Bowl. So I'll be interested to see what happens. But let's go over some of your guys' comments so far. WWE Clark, nice to see you in here again. He says, LFG, Chiefs Super Bowl, baby. Yeah, I can't wait for the game to happen. I'm just counting down the hours. He also points out the 2007 Patriots lost the Super Bowl. That is correct. So if the Eagles are like the 2007 Patriots, then that tells you what you need to know. On a serious note, though, like Vince Quinn, when he was on the radio earlier today, he said that he thinks this is one of the best teams of all time. I'm sorry. Who have the Eagles beaten this year? Who have they beaten? Yeah, they have a really good record. Who have they beaten that is like a really good win? I'm not seeing it. Again, the Eagles are a really good team. I'm not trying to discredit them, but one of the greatest teams of all time? I'm sorry. No. Raven says the pass defense rating for the Eagles reminds me of the Bills last year. Face no good QBs. Yes, exactly. And the Eagles, they have the number 1 pass defense this year, but look at who they faced. Taylor Heineke, Cooper Rush, Aaron Rodgers when he wasn't very good this year, and even he put up 30 points on them. Just a very, 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 very easy schedule. And I think, and if you've watched the Eagles defense, if you pay attention to their defensive backs, the way they play defense, they play a lot of soft zone. And the Bills played a lot of zone that year too. And that's fine, but I think the Chiefs are going to tear apart the soft zone. Travis Kelce, he's one of the best in the league versus zone coverage. If Kadarius Toney is healthy, I think he'll take advantage. Carrington Harrison, I listened to him a lot today. He also pointed out that Kadarius Toney has been targeted on 60% of his routes when he's been on the field for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's an insane number. That means like 2/3 of the time they're throwing the ball to Kadarius Toney when he is running around. I think Kadarius Toney, if he's healthy, is going to be a huge factor in this game, and he'll be key to beating that Eagles zone defense. Same thing with Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I think he'll be able to take advantage of that. I'm not scared of the Eagles defense. I think the Chiefs will have their way with this Eagles defense. They'll find a way to win this game. And they'll put up points. I mean, the Chiefs were the number one scoring offense this year. I know the Eagles were right behind them, but I like the Chiefs defense better than the Eagles defense actually in this game. The Eagles defensive line scares me, yes, but I think we're going to see a hell of a game plan from Andy Reid. I just do. I think he's fired up for this game. You have to consider Andy Reid's record coming off of the bye week. And I think they had to go vanilla against the Cincinnati Bengals in the AFC Championship game, which means they didn't get to bring out some of the stuff that they really wanted to, which means they'll probably be able to use that in this game against the Philadelphia Eagles because they haven't seen it yet. Latin Assassin says, I'm a big fan of putting 5 on the D-line, rushing 3, pulling 8, back on 3rd and 5 to spy, force Hurts to make reads. Yeah, although I would say that Jalen Hurts has the 20th ranked QBR in the league this year when being blitzed. So I think Spags, we know Spags likes to blitz. They're going to send pressure in this game. He likes to get aggressive, and I would like to see that. Just try it out at first, see how that goes. I would blitz Jalen Hurts a little bit and see how he responds to that. And if it's working, you keep going with it. But your idea isn't bad either if the Eagles are trying to go deep on the Chiefs all the time, because you do have to take their wide receivers very seriously, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I mean, they've been killing it with the deep ball all year. Now, with Jalen Hurts' shoulder injury, I'm not sure how good he'll be at getting the ball to those receivers accurately, which is where, your idea really comes into play, because then you could force him to make a throw that he didn't mean to make, or, it's just not accurate with that shoulder injury going on. And one of the Chiefs DBs can get lucky and get a pick because they have so many guys back there in coverage. So, yeah, I mean, I'd be interested to see that. I think we'll see a lot of different things from Spagnuolo in this game, and I think he's dialing up a really good game plan. I mean, guys, think about it. Steve Spagnuolo is going for his 4th Super Bowl win. And as much crap as I've given Steve Spagnuolo as a defensive coordinator, and he's frustrated the hell out of me over the years with some of his personnel decisions, guys, Steve Spagnuolo is going for his 4th Super Bowl ring. Like, he is going to be a Hall of Fame defensive coordinator. And this game will seal that fact if the Chiefs can win. So I'll be interested to see what we see from Steve Spagnuolo. Also, there was another guest that CDOT had on today. I forget his name, but he was also from Philadelphia Sports Radio. And he basically said that it's ridiculous the fact that people are considering the Chiefs will even win this game at all. I don't know where this disrespect is coming from. People are acting like the Chiefs just had never been in this game before. Again, we're acting like the Eagles are the 85 Bears here, and I just don't agree with that. It's ridiculous to me, the disrespect the Chiefs are seeing in this game all week long from the media. I know ESPN put out a piece where they had basically all of their writers who cover a team pick who they're going to win this game, and over half of them picked the Eagles to win this game. Now, I'm not saying the Eagles are a bad pick. I mean, if you pick the Eagles to win this game, I'm not going to blame you. The Eagles are a good team. But there seems to be a lot of disrespect towards the Chiefs. There seems to be a lot of discrediting of the Chiefs, despite the fact they've been through all this before. They have the experience. I'm not worried about the Chiefs at all. For those of you that are just coming on here, though, guys, this is a Q&A. This is about you guys. I really wanted to do a Q&A with you guys tonight. So if you're here and you got a comment or a question, something, put it in there, and I will get to it. And you will be recognized, and I will answer your question. Tonight is about you guys. I'm just trying to chill, talk football tonight with you guys, since it's been a while since I've done a video like this. So please be active in the comments, and I will gladly acknowledge your comments. Another thing that I want to talk about in this game, the Chiefs in the trenches. You know, I made a video earlier this week about who has the advantages in the trenches, the Kansas City Chiefs or the Philadelphia Eagles. And honestly, I kind of surprised myself with my take. I said the Chiefs had the advantage in both the offensive line and defensive line in this game, and here's why. Even though I think the Eagles have the best defensive line when it comes to production and talent, I think they're going up against a taller task in the Chiefs offensive line than they've seen really all year long. There's multiple all pros on the Chiefs offensive line. The Chiefs are third in the league this year in sacks allowed. This is an offensive line that the Eagles haven't really seen this year. Now, I think they can take advantage of the tackle matchups in Orlando Brown and Andrew Wiley, sure. And Hassan Reddick and Brandon Graham, you know, those guys are really good. Josh Sweat as well. The Eagles have a lot of bodies that they can throw at you. I just think this offensive line is one that the Eagles aren't ready for it, man. I think the Eagles have this mentality that this game is going to be easy for them and that the Chiefs don't stand a chance. And I think they're in for a rude awakening. I also think the Chiefs have the overwhelming advantage in the run game because the Eagles were 15th defending the run this year and rush yards allowed per game. And we know this Chiefs offensive line, their strength is run blocking. That is their ultimate strength. If they're opening up holes in the run game, I think the Chiefs will take advantage of that. And that's why I gave the Chiefs offensive line the advantage in this game over the Eagles D-line is because I think the Chiefs offensive line deserves the benefit of the doubt. They're third in the league this year in sacks allowed, and you have Patrick Mahomes, who's one of the best when it comes to evading sacks. And I think he will be getting the ball out quick in this game, a little bit quicker than he usually does, just to make up for how good that Eagles pass rush is, and because of the fact it can win with speed. And when you're winning with speed, you can get to the quarterback quickly, and that can create some problems. I'm also giving the Chiefs defensive line the advantage in this game because the Eagles actually allowed more than double the sacks this year than the Chiefs did. And the Chiefs defensive line was second in the league in sacks this year. Even though they were 55 to the Eagles 70 sacks, I think this front four has really stepped up down the stretch. Earlier in the season, they were getting a lot of their sacks due to blitzes. They still blitz a lot, and that's fine. But their front fours are getting pressure on their own, which is something you couldn't really say earlier in the season. Chris Jones is having a monstrous postseason. Frank Clark has a couple of sacks already. George Karlaftis had a sack against the Bengals. We got Carlos Dunlap. There's a bunch of experience on this D-line, and I'm excited to see what they do in this game. And I'm giving them the advantage also because even though the Eagles have a really good run game, you have to respect the Chiefs' run defense. They've made tremendous strides in run defense this year. They were top 10 in stopping the run. So that's why I'm giving the Chiefs the advantage in the trenches. And also the Eagles have a couple injuries on their offensive line. Landon Dickerson, their starting guard, had a hyperextended elbow in the NFC Championship game. Now he's going to play in this game, but I wonder if they'll try to exploit that a little bit. And then Lane Johnson, their starting tackle, has a torn groin. I can't imagine what it's like playing with a torn groin. I understand why he's playing in this game. I think if it was earlier in the regular season, he would have sat out a little bit, but I don't know, man. I would try to attack that matchup if I were the Chiefs. Derelict says, well, according to most of the statistics, these two teams are almost identical in terms of talent and ability. And look, yeah, I exactly agree. I think these two teams are very evenly matched. I think this is going to be a close game. I think if it were a blowout in either direction, it would be the Chiefs blowing out the Eagles, but I'm not predicting a blowout. I think this is going to be a really close game. I think this is going to be a really fun game. I think there's a good chance it's tied heading into the fourth quarter. I don't get where this narrative is coming from that the Eagles are just this dominant roster and they're too good for the Chiefs. We're talking about Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, guys, in the postseason. Travis Kelce, Chris Jones. All those names I just named. Those are future Hall of Famers we're talking about. I don't think they're just going to get run over by the Eagles. That's not happening. I thought the Bengals were better than the Eagles. I thought the Bengals were the scarier opponent than the Eagles. I thought they were hotter than the Eagles. And the Chiefs went out there and they beat them with a one-legged Mahomes and all their top receivers injured. So, yeah, I'm confident against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think it's going to be a close game, and I feel good about the Chiefs' chances of winning. So, that's that. Another thing. This game is a huge legacy game for Patrick Mahomes because Patrick Mahomes just won his second MVP last night, in case you guys missed it. And another note about Mahomes winning the MVP is for some reason, Josh Allen got a vote for MVP. Whoever voted for Josh Allen for MVP should have their vote stripped away. Jalen Hurts got the other vote, which is fine. There was a legit argument for Jalen Hurts being the MVP this year. I can respect that. Josh Allen? Really? Really? But the reason I say this is a legacy game for Patrick Mahomes, well, one, because it's a Super Bowl, but two, guys, if he wins this game, he will have 2 MVPs, 2 Super Bowl wins, and possibly 2 Super Bowl MVPs by the age of 28. And at that point, we're talking about Mahomes being a Hall of Famer if he retired after the Super Bowl. If the Chiefs won the Super Bowl and Mahomes just decided he wanted to retire, he would be a Hall of Famer. He's entering the category where all the silly comparisons that the talking heads have loved to make with Patrick Mahomes for the past couple of years, like, they would just be foolish. I mean, they already were foolish, but like they would be beyond ridiculous at this point. Like, we would know you're doing it just for clickbait, because no one else would be in the conversation with Mahomes. Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, those guys are all fantastic quarterbacks. They're not Patrick Mahomes. And if Patrick Mahomes wins this Super Bowl with his resume the way it is, you can't put anyone up against him. It would be ridiculous. AHFA Recon, good to see you in here, man. You've been really active on my channel. Appreciate the support. He says, we got to beat these Eagles because Enter That Prison is a fan of them. LOL. Yeah, I'm assuming you're talking about EDP 445, which I saw that he was running a GoFundMe to get his fans, or what's left of them, to fund his trip to the Super Bowl. But we also have Chiefsaholic, who apparently is out of prison at this point, or out of jail, I should say. If you guys don't know who Chiefsaholic is, just go look him up. I'm not going to explain the whole story again, but to give you the short story, Chiefsaholic is a Chiefs superfan, was a Chiefs superfan that dressed up as a wolf at the games. You may very well have seen him before. He was arrested for robbing a bank on his way to the Houston Texans game. He stopped off at a bank in Tulsa, and he robbed it. Went to jail. His bond was set at $200,000. He begged the judge to lower the bond so he could get out and watch his beloved Chiefs win the Super Bowl. The judge lowered the bond to $80,000. Chiefsaholic laid down a bet before the season that would have netted him $90,000 for Patrick Mahomes to win the MVP. Mahomes won the MVP last night, meaning Chiefsaholic is $90,000 richer, can bail himself out of jail. His bond was posted. We think he's out of jail at this point, and he's just running around. I'm assuming his lawyer told him to stay off Twitter, stay off social media. And yeah, Chiefsaholic is out as far as we know, which is kind of a bad thing because the Chiefs have been undefeated since Chiefsaholic went to jail. I don't want that to change. I wanted Chiefsaholic to stay in jail. One, because he's a violent criminal that I don't think deserves to be out of jail. But two, the Chiefs were doing really good while Chiefsaholic was behind bars. So that story is insane, man. And if you guys haven't read the New York Times article on Chiefsaholic, please go do that. It's really interesting. It's kind of funny. It's also kind of sad because it talks about Chiefsaholic's upbringing and his family's like history of crime and how he was raised on crime. But you guys should really go read it. The New York Times did a fantastic job on that. But yeah, Eric, good to see you in here. He says, who's worse, EDP or Chiefsaholic? I mean, if you're talking about like what EDP potentially almost did was probably worse, but also I'm not a huge fan of somebody pointing a gun at someone's head and asking them for a bunch of money, which is what Chiefsaholic did. Both are horrible things. It's a toss-up. Where was I before that? Patrick Mahomes, this being a legacy game, went over that. And again, for those of you who maybe just got in here, Q&A for you guys. If you have questions or comments, please put them down in the comments and I will acknowledge them. Tonight is about you guys. Make sure you like and share as well so more Chiefs fans can find this. I'm trying to get as big of a crowd as possible. Really appreciate it. Yeah, so this is a legacy game for Patrick Mahomes, like I said. I also think that this game is a must-win. Again, yes, because it's the Super Bowl, but also because for the same reasons I said the AFC Championship game was so important. If the Chiefs had lost that AFC Championship game, they would have had a losing record in the 5 straight home AFC Championship games that they've hosted. And to me, that would have felt like a little bit of a failure. if you're in 5 straight AFC championship games at home, you need to be winning a majority of those. Now, I don't want to sound ungrateful as a fan. You need to be, we need to be grateful for this run that the Chiefs are on and acknowledge how extremely hard that is to do. And yeah, I acknowledge how hard that is, but it would have felt like a little bit of a failure if the Chiefs only won a couple of those AFC championship games. They won. Now they're in the Super Bowl. If the Chiefs lose this Super Bowl, they will be 1-2 in Super Bowls in the Patrick Mahomes era. 2-1 sounds a hell of a lot better than 1-2. So I don't want the Chiefs to have a losing record in Super Bowls because that's kind of hard to recover from. And that would not be good for Mahomes' legacy. Right now, we're worried about Patrick Mahomes catching Tom Brady, chasing history. And winning this Super Bowl and possibly another Super Bowl MVP brings them even closer to doing that. Latin Assassin says, Snead is going to be big this game. His ability to disguise the blitzes, his coverage, and run-stopping ability will be huge. I totally agree. I also think I wrote an article for arrowheadaddict.com about this as well. I talked about him coming back being important. Like you said, his blitzing ability, he's one of the best at doing that. His playmaking ability, he was tied for the lead in interceptions on the team this year. He's a playmaker. He forces turnovers. He's also the only veteran among the cornerback group. Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, and Trent McDuffie, they're all rookies. They've never played in a Super Bowl before. Snead has played in a Super Bowl before. You need that experience out there. You need someone who's been in this kind of environment, someone out there who, Snead is a leader of this defense. He's going to be able to tell these guys where they need to be, what they need to be doing, because he just has that knowledge of the defense. He's a veteran in this league, and that's why he's so big in this game. And also, he's another body you can throw at this talented Eagles wide receiver group. And he's going to be huge in this one. Yeah, I think he's going to be big in this game. I absolutely agree. There's no denying that he will be huge in this game. All the defensive backs will be huge in this game. They need to be on their A game. And if the Chiefs can get the type of defensive back performance that they got, or anywhere close to the one that they got, even without L'Jarius Snead in the Super Bowl, they're going to be fine. They're going to win this game. If they get at least an interception on Jalen Hurts, they win the turnover battle, and they played the way they did in the AFC Championship game, they're going to win this game. Wyatt Burns says, do you think the Chiefs should run the ball or pass it more? I think they should obviously pass it more. Like saying the Chiefs should run the ball more in this game, you're going against everything this Chiefs team has always been about since Patrick Mahomes has been the quarterback. Like I want Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball more than I want the Chiefs running the ball. Unless, of course, you're just absolutely dominating the run game like the Chiefs did against the Buffalo Bills a couple of years ago in the regular season. But I want the Chiefs to be passing the ball more. That said, the Eagles were, I want to say, they were like bottom half of the league this year in stopping the run. You can run at their edges. You can create holes in the run game versus the Philadelphia Eagles. The Chiefs did it last year against the Philadelphia Eagles. Clyde Edwards-Helaire ran for over 100 yards. And if CEH is running for over 100 yards in a game, you're doing something right as an offensive line. I know this defensive line for the Eagles is a little bit different than the one we saw a year ago, but I think you can really run on them. And I think the Chiefs need to be running the ball at a fair rate to keep the defense honest. But let's be real. The Kansas City Chiefs are all about throwing the ball. They're a passing offense, and I'm totally fine with that. And I also think they have a plan to expose the Eagles secondary in this game. So, yeah, they need to be running the ball or passing the ball more. Sorry. They should mix it up a little bit. Sure. Run it your fair, Isaiah Pacheco, Jerick McKinnon, they should probably combine for somewhere around 10 carries in the first half, I think. But you need to be passing the ball more for sure. Thanks for the question, though, Wyatt. I want to talk about the Kelce Bowl a little bit. I know that storyline's really been hammered this week about Travis Kelce versus Jason Kelce. I was listening to the New Heights podcast episode they came out earlier today with, where they talked to both of their parents, especially Donna Kelce, the mom. You guys have all seen her before, probably. She's got the picture of her wearing a jersey where it's half Travis, half Jason. And I just got to say, I could not imagine. I mean, she said, this game is going to be really fun for her because Jason and Travis have both won a Super Bowl already, so it's not like, oh, you're just rooting for the son that hasn't won one yet. Like, they both won. So she doesn't care who wins in this game. She's rooting for both teams. But I also couldn't imagine having a kid on both teams. Like, that is just insane to me. It's insane that both Kelseys even made it to the Super Bowl. Like, the odds of that happening are just insane. And again, I know the storyline has really been hammered this week, but it's so interesting that both Kelseys are in this game. And man, I saw someone talk about this earlier today on Twitter, but that post-game hug between Jason Kelce and Travis Kelce, no matter who wins this game, it's just gonna hit different. It's gonna be a cool moment for sure. I got another question from Wyatt Burns. Thanks for your question. And for those of you that are new in here, please, if you have a comment or a question, something like that, please leave it down below. I'm trying to interact with you guys tonight. Tonight is all about you guys. I just wanted to chill and talk football, do a little bit of a Super Bowl 57 Q&A. So I really appreciate it. Wyatt says, how good do you think OBJ will play, as in Orlando Brown Jr.? Orlando Brown has actually had a solid postseason. I think he knows that he didn't really have an ideal regular season. I mean, he wouldn't be honest with himself if he told himself he had a good regular season. It was all right. He was better in the second half of the season, had a very rough first half of the season, and now he's playing good in the postseason. He's doing a good job. And at this point, if you're Orlando Brown, you can earn a lot of that money back that you maybe lost with the way that you played the season, because he turned down that big contract that he got from the Chiefs in the offseason. And a lot of us were saying he might never see that money again with the way that he's been playing this year. Well, what better way to earn that money back than by having a dominant performance in the postseason? And I think he's going to go into this game with that mentality. He wants to win. He wants to play well. But Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, that's a really tough matchup for him, because the type of pass rusher that gives Orlando Brown Jr. problems is your speed rushers, the guys that win with speed, or they're quick, low to the ground, they can get around you. And that's exactly what Hassan Reddick is. Josh Sweat is a little bit more of a mix of power and speed, but he can definitely give you problems as well. He's very good. He had double-digit sacks this year. But Hassan Reddick is the matchup I'm worried about. If they line up Hassan Reddick or Orlando Brown, I'm going to be worried about that, because Hassan Reddick is one of the speediest pass rushers in the league. I'm a huge fan of his game. That'll be a tough matchup. But I think if OBJ is keeping the pressures to a minimum and not allowing any sacks, that's a win for the Chiefs. Absolutely, it's a win for the Chiefs. I mean, that's obvious. How do I think he'll play in this game, though? I think he'll play decent. He might allow a sack. I said to Michael Darcy on one of our videos earlier this week that I think the magic number is 3 when it comes to sacks allowed for the Chiefs. If you're allowing 3 sacks or less, I think you're fine. You can survive that. If you're allowing more than 3 sacks in this game, things might start going south. I think if you give him a cushion of allowing 1 sack in this game, then he can perform pretty well. That's my opinion, though. The Eagles pass rush will be a challenge for him, but I do believe he can step up. We'll see how well he plays, though. All right, so I'm coming up on about a little over half an hour here. You guys, your comments and questions have slowed down. So again, please, if you have comments or questions, please leave them. I know I sprung this on you guys kind of last minute tonight doing a Q&A, but I did really want to do one. So for those of you that are in here, please, if you have a comment or question, throw it in there. Otherwise, I'll just go ahead and wrap up. But I talked about most of the things I wanted to talk about today. I'm just ready for this game to happen, man. I really am. We've gotten to the point where like some of the sports talking heads on TV are starting to say some ridiculous stuff. And it's like, all right, can this game just happen already? Like, please. I'm ready for this game to happen. I'm not so much nervous about this game as I was for the Cincinnati Bengals game. That Cincinnati Bengals game just like stressed me the hell out. And I was scared that the Chiefs could lose that game because I knew the threat that the Bengals posed. And as I've said before, I don't think that I wasn't scared of the Bengals. I knew the Chiefs could beat them. I was just afraid of the Chiefs making that mistake that would cause them to lose the game. And it almost happened, but they bounced back. They won. They persevered. They faced a lot of adversity. So that's a good thing. But I'm not nervous for this game. I mean, I'm sure the nerves will kick in a little bit once we get closer to kickoff. But like I'm confident. Like in my mind, the way I see it, you have to win one more game. One more. The Chiefs lost what 3 games in the regular season this year. All they've done is win, 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 win in the Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid era. This Eagles team is a good team, sure, but man, all you got to do is win one more. Just win one more game. And I think Andy Reid has an awesome game plan drawn up. And it's one more game, man. You just got to win one more, and you're on the top of the mountain of the NFL. So that's why I'm confident in this one. I'm confident in Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones. I think they got this, man. I really do. Derelict says, do you think they activate Shelton? I assume you're talking about Danny Shelton, the defensive tackle that the Chiefs have on the practice squad. I'm going to say no because they haven't all year. I don't know why you would activate him for the Super Bowl. And also, Brandon Williams is on this team. I know a lot of people forget Brandon Williams, the former Ravens defensive tackle. And he does what Danny Shelton does, but I think a little bit better. He comes in, he stuffs the run. He plays maybe like 10 snaps a game when you're playing what you think is a rundown on defense. And he stuffs the run. And I think he fills the role that Danny Shelton would much better. I think he's fine. I don't think we'll see Shelton activated. Brandon Williams is that guy for that role. Wyatt Burns says, what do you do with Andrew Wiley? Because obviously Andrew Wiley is one of your biggest weaknesses on this offensive line. Now, if Andrew Wiley is your worst player on the offensive line, like you're fine. He's not bad. He's actually had a solid postseason himself, besides a couple stupid penalties in the Bengals game. But performance-wise, he's been fine. Now, if he struggles in this game, what do? You chip him with a tight end. The Chiefs have all their tight ends healthy this time of the season. I don't know if they'll have all of them active for this game, but you got a lot of options. I would chip him with the tight end, the defensive end, if Wiley is struggling. And what I would do is, if anyone on the offensive line is struggling, what you do is you throw Jerick McKinnon back there in the backfield with Patrick Mahomes to pass protect. Because Jerick McKinnon is basically a sixth offensive lineman. He's been one of the best pass protectors at the running back position all year long. The dude will throw his entire body at a defensive lineman if it means they will not touch Patrick Mahomes. That's what you do if an offensive lineman is struggling. Just when in doubt, throw Jerick McKinnon back there. That's what you do. It's worked all year. Eddie Rose, nice to see you in here. I know he's a regular. He says, hey, Josh, do you think the NFL is rigged? Will you do a Mizzou spring game post game on March 18th? No, I don't think the NFL is rigged. As far as a Mizzou spring game, so if it's anything like last year, no, because it wasn't even a game. Like the spring game literally was not a game. It was just a bunch of practice drills. There's nothing, and even if it was a spring game, what you have to remember about the spring game is that there's nothing you can take away from the spring game. People like to pretend there's something you can take away from it. There's not. There's nothing to analyze. It's just a practice scrimmage for the players that are going maybe 70%. And it's just there's not much you can say. Like in the spring game, everyone's going to say, oh, Mizzou, they look like they have a really good team. Well, yeah, they look like they have a really good team playing against themselves. We won't know anything until the regular season. But, I mean, I'll do a podcast, sure, talking about, the roster and breaking that down and everything. But as far as, like, an actual analysis on the spring game, no, probably not. Wyatt Burns says, are you ready for Frank Clark the Shark? Wyatt, are you a regular on my channel? Because I haven't seen your comments before. But if you have been a regular, you would know that I've been a big Frank Clark doubter. So I'm assuming that's why you threw on the laughing emojis, is because I've been a big Frank Clark pessimist. But I've given him his flowers this postseason, in all seriousness. Like, he is having a good postseason. I always struggled to get Frank Clark the playoff Frank Clark label, because I always felt like his 2019 postseason run was overrated in a lot of ways. Yeah, I've said this so many times. He got a lot of sacks in garbage time when the Chiefs were up by double digits in the fourth quarter of games that were over, and people would be like, oh, Frank Clark got a sack. And it's like, yeah, but it had no impact on the game. Sacking Deshaun Watson with less than 2 minutes left and you're up 20, it's not impressive to me. So that's why I was always skeptical of the Frank Clark, postseason label. And then people were pretending that Frank Clark wasn't silent for the last 2 postseasons before this one. He had 0 pressures in the AFC Championship game against the Bengals last year. He totally failed the Chiefs. The entire pass rush failed the Chiefs, but him most specifically because he had 0 pressures. Like, at least Chris Jones was getting pressures in that game. Melvin Ingram had a sack. Frank Clark didn't even have a pressure. And so I was like, well, it's time to stop with the playoff Frank Clark stuff. But this postseason, I give the dude his props. I give him his credit. He's been good, and I hope he can continue it in the Super Bowl. I'm not going to complain. If Frank Clark has multiple sacks in the Super Bowl, quote me on that. You guys, you can bring this back up, and I will deliver on this promise. If Frank Clark has 2 sacks in the Super Bowl and the Chiefs win, let me clarify, if the Chiefs win, I will buy a Frank Clark jersey. I said it. You guys can quote me on that. There you go. Wyatt says, I've been a regular. I just don't comment a lot. Makes sense. I figured that's why you threw out the laughing emojis at the end. Well, it's nice to see you commenting, man. That's awesome. Always love when people interact with me. Because, I genuinely care about you guys. I listen to what you have to say. In my free time, I try to read my comments and respond to as many of them as possible, unless they're just ridiculous. So I really appreciate it. So, guys, we're at about 41 minutes here. I wanted to keep this a little bit less than an hour. You guys have slowed ahead and wrap it up there. Oh, here we go. Jeffrey, just saw that you're in here. He says, I vow to do the same thing with the Clark jersey. Sounds good. You and me both. If Frank Clark has 2 sacks and the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, Jeffrey and I will both buy a Frank Clark jersey. Now, people are then going to try to push it and try to get me to buy a Clyde Edwards-Helaire jersey if he somehow has a good game. I'm not doing that. I'm not buying Clyde Edwards-Helaire jersey under no circumstances. Because I don't even think the dude will be on the team next year. I think if Frank Clark continues playing well, he's going to be on the team next year. It will just have to be at a reduced cost, of course. But another thing with Frank Clark, though, is, I didn't really realize how much the dude has battled through. He lost his family in a house fire shortly before coming over to the Chiefs. And he talked about how much Andy Reid has been a father figure to him. And when I saw them have their moment after the AFC Championship game, it really just hit me like how important this organization is to Frank Clark. Yeah, just football aside. And he tweeted today talking about, how everyone was trash talking him, including myself, and how he was not playing up to, Andy Reid talked about Frank Clark talked about how Andy Reid talked to him and had an honest conversation that he was not performing like he should. And Frank Clark took that to heart, and he went out there and he had a good season. I mean, he wasn't and he never will be the player that the Chiefs traded for before the 2019 season. But, if he can have a visible impact, give you 5 or 6 sacks like he did this year, then, I'll welcome that on the team next year. He might have to take more of a rotational role next year as the Chiefs add to this pass rush still. But I think he has a place on this team. Mateo Burgos says, should we re-sign Clark? I kind of just answered that. I'm also writing about that for Arrowhead Addict. I hope that article will be coming out either tomorrow or maybe the day of the Super Bowl. I don't know when. But yeah, check that out if you get a chance. Derelict says, do you think the Chiefs D-line is legit or a product of poor offensive lines they faced recently? That's a good question, actually. I haven't really talked about this week. Really good question. I think okay. So if you look at the Chiefs and their splits when it comes to sacks, yes, they've accumulated a lot of sacks from playing lesser teams, but also that's expected. When you play a lesser team with a worse offensive line, you're going to get more sacks. That's just how it works. You expect this team to get sacks against teams with bad offensive lines. But they've also been sacking the quarterback against teams that are pretty good. I know the Bengals' offensive line was beat up, but we saw the Chiefs get after Joe Burrow all night in a way they haven't done all season to any quarterback. And I don't think that was just because the Bengals' offensive line was so bad. I just think the Chiefs D line was not going to let them lose that game. Their pressure rate is also up from their front four. That's important too. We can talk about sacks and the way they're accumulated, but what's also important is, are you getting pressure? The Chiefs are continuing to get pressure, even against the good teams. The Jacksonville Jaguars, they were in Trevor Lawrence's face all night. Chris Jones almost had a sack. He caused Frank Clark's sack. Frank Clark had a sack. Derek Nottie had a sack. I think Colin Saunders had a sack or almost had one. So yes, they do produce when they face poor offensive lines, but I don't think they're only good because they face bad offensive lines. I think they're a lot better this year. I mean, they were second in the league in sacks with 55. That doesn't happen if you're only good against bad teams. So hopefully that answered your question, but thank you for the question. This is a good question. Mateo says we need to drop Clyde. Totally agree. I think Pacheco and McKinnon are great. I think the Chiefs should also add another running back to the draft or free agency this offseason, and that will get Clyde off of this team. That'll just bump him off. I just don't think he'll have a place. Jeffrey says the same thing. Wyatt says, how good of a game do you think Nick Bolton will have? Hopefully better than he played against the Bengals, because even though the defense stepped up against the Bengals, Nick Bolton had a rough game. Nick Bolton he looked afraid to hit against the Bengals. Like, there was a play where Joe Burrow shook him and Nick Bolton just whiffed on the tackle. It looked like he didn't even try to tackle him. Now, it's worth noting that Nick Bolton was on the injury report leading up to that game. I don't know if that caused him to play a little bit timid, or also because like Joe Burrow is a quarterback and we know how defensive players kind of hesitate to hit the quarterback like they normally would a skill player. In this game though, Nick Bolton's going to have as good of a game as Nick Bolton's going to want to have. The one thing that's frustrating me with Nick Bolton, people love to bag on him because of his coverage ability. Yes, he's not a good coverage linebacker. That's not his thing. His thing is defending the run, being a downhill linebacker, stiffing out plays, getting tackles for a loss. And he can do that if he's aggressive and he has the will to do so. Sometimes I feel like he plays a little bit timid. And when I watched him at Mizzou, that dude would hit like a truck. He was not afraid to hit. And I feel like he plays a little bit more timid than he should be playing. If he can go out there and play with the aggressiveness that I think he has in him, he will have a good game. Nick Bolton will have as good of a game as he wants to have. And I do believe he can be good in this game. I mean, this is the type of game where you need him to be good because the Eagles are a really good running team. They're one of the best running teams this season. They got Kenneth Gainwell, Miles Sanders, Boston Scott. They got a nice little stable running back. So Nick Bolton will need to have a good game. Mateo says Clyde does not bring anything to the team. Time to move on. Yeah, I mean, he's slow, small, unathletic, and he only gets what the offensive line gives to him. That's not a running back that screams, I deserve RB1 carries or RB2 carries. I think Jerick McKinnon is better. And Clyde doesn't have the pass protection that Jerick McKinnon does. Part of it is because he's a smaller dude, and it's just harder for him to block guys, but he's just also not as good as Jerick McKinnon when it comes to pass protection. So I've had that conversation about Clyde many times. Mateo says, do you think the Chiefs D-line gets 5 sacks, the Chiefs win? Yes, if they get 5 sacks, they're absolutely winning this game. Do I think they'll get 5 sacks? No. They sacked Joe Burrow 5 times, but that Bengals offensive line was pretty rough. Joe Burrow does get the ball out pretty quick, though. That's worth noting. Jalen Hurts, he's been easier to sack this year than people realize, even though he has that mobile quarterback label to him. I mean, because he is a mobile quarterback. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're good at avoiding sacks like Patrick Mahomes is. Jalen Hurts, you can sack him. I mean, the Eagles, they allowed, 46 sacks this year? So, yeah, it's not impossible if the Chiefs get 3 or 4 sacks. 5 seems like a high number. But, yeah, if they get there, yeah, I think the Chiefs they'll win this game for sure. I mean, if you're getting 5 sacks, I mean, you're bottling up a lot of drives that the Eagles could potentially be scoring on. Yeah, I think you'll win at that point. Jeffrey, he says, Josh and I would have an absolute field day on Twitter if the Chiefs win and Nick has a great game or makes a game-stealing play. And that's the other thing with Nick Bolton that, I don't get this whole, crapping on him because he's bad in coverage. He makes plays. He forced a turnover against the Jacksonville Jaguars that essentially won the game for the Chiefs. The Jacksonville Jaguars were in the red zone, and Nick Bolton puts his head in there on the tackle on Jamal Agnew, forces a fumble. Nick Bolton's a playmaker, man. He makes plays. Does he have some moments where he's rough in coverage? He gives up a 20-yard pass on the middle of the field and whatnot. Yeah, but if he can be your run-stuffing linebacker that we've seen him be before, getting tackles for a loss behind the line of scrimmage, then you take that. Eddie Rose says, what do you think about the Vikings' future real quick? Love your videos, Josh. I love talking Mizzou with you. Thank you, and I need to get back to making Mizzou content at some point. The Vikings, You're not going anywhere with Kirk Cousins, man. I'm sorry. He's a decent quarterback. I think he's underrated from a national perspective. I think he's overrated from a Vikings fan perspective. I don't think you're going to win with Super Bowl with him. I just don't. Mateo says, do you think Hardman is back next year? I don't think he will be. Someone will overpay him. I tend to agree with you. A lot of people, there is a small chance that he comes back on a cheaper deal because, he had injuries and that could bring down his value a little bit. And maybe he bets on himself for one more year, comes back to the Chiefs on a 1-year deal or something like that. And maybe has a better year next year in this offense and then goes and gets a bigger deal. But I tend to think that because this wide receiver market is so weak, that Mecole Hardman is going to get like 10 to 11 million per year from some other team. He's going to get the Marquez Valdez-Scantling contract from another team. That's not the Chiefs, I think. And I think the Marquez Valdez-Scantling contract that Hardman is going to get from another team, the Chiefs should be giving to Juju Smith-Schuster, who's the much more reliable receiver, and he's a better fit for this offense. I'll miss Mecole. I think Mecole's been a really frustrating player for his entire tenure here, but I think he provides something. Him and Clyde Edwards-Helaire get talked about in a similar light because they're both kind of, disappointments or whatever for their own reasons. But Mecole Hardman at least gives you that 15, 20% chance that he gives you a 60-yard touchdown and he is that game-breaking play. Clyde Edwards-Helaire provides no big play ability at all. Mecole Hardman, he's a weapon for this team. Like, you give him a handoff, Mecole Hardman has come up with key first downs all year. The Chiefs' red zone offense has been successful largely due to Mecole Hardman. And that's where I disagree with you, Eric. I'm not losing it, I swear. Do I think Mecole Hardman is a top 3 receiver on this team? No. But I think he's a good player to have on this team. I love Kadarius Toney. I think Kadarius Toney can take over the Mecole Hardman role if he leaves. But Kadarius Toney hasn't shown he can be healthy as much as I want it to happen for the guy. If he's not going to be healthy, I'd like to have Mecole Hardman there to do that thing. Mecole Hardman is a frustrating as hell player, and I regret saying this at some times that I want to have him on this team because of some of the plays that he botches. But, man, I want that big playability. And I think that you need to keep as much of this current wide receiver core on the team next year as possible, even though I think the Chiefs will draft a receiver. If you don't re-sign Hardman, there's the possibility you lose Juju. And then look what you got in your wide receiver group. MVS, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney. You cannot go into next year with that being a group. And a rookie as well. Like, you got to keep at least one of Juju or Mecole, in my opinion. I'd take Juju, of course, but I don't think it's possible Hardman comes back, but I do think another team will probably sign him. Jeffrey says, I think we re-sign or attempt to re-sign Juju. Agree. On Spot Track, he's projected to get a 3-year, $36 million deal. I would give that to him right now. That is a steal for Juju Smith-Schuster, a guy that would have been a 1,000-yard receiver if not for getting concussed against the Jaguars. Sure. I'd also try to add a veteran as well, probably like Eric just mentioned, Keenan, D-Hop, or MT. I go with any of those guys. None of those guys are extremely reliable. MT, his lower body is like totally given out on him. Keenan Allen, he misses games a lot. But I definitely take a flyer on any of those guys and give Mahomes a true wide receiver 1 again. You guys have been killing it with the question since I said I was about to wrap up, but I'll keep riding with it. Mateo says Hardman has so much potential if he would just work on his weaknesses. Yeah, and if he would actually have the drive to work on those weaknesses. It's been rumored that it's been basically confirmed that like Mahomes would ask him to work out with him in the offseason. Mecole would be like, "No, I'm good." And they would post pictures and videos of Mahomes throwing to all the receivers, and Mecole would never be there. Like, it's on Mecole to take this game more seriously than he does and getting better and improving because we saw flashes year 1 of Mecole Hardman like being a really good receiver. And then he just never really improved from then. He's just kind of stayed the same player since. And we want to see more. And we know he's capable of more. That's the frustrating thing. Jeffrey says, oh, by the way, I actually skipped a question that I had up there. Amani says, I'm calling it right now, bro. Patrick Mahomes, the second goes off for 40 to 50 for 350 yards, 3 TDs, and 1 rushing TD. Chiefs win 45-28. Thoughts? LOO jokes aside, hopefully it's a clear win this Sunday. Just play clean ball. I know you're kind of saying that in jest, the crazy stat line. I don't doubt that Patrick Mahomes goes out there and throws for over 300 yards and has 3 total touchdowns. I can see that kind of game coming from him. And if he does that, I think the Chiefs are winning this game. And as far as winning this Sunday, I'm confident the Chiefs will win. I think if they do win, they will win by multiple scores. I think it'll be a scenario where it's tied going into the fourth quarter, and then the Chiefs just kind of start to run away with it. They get a touchdown, maybe add a field goal on top of it, and it's like a, I don't know, 33-20 win or something like that. So, yeah, that's kind of my prediction. That's my rough prediction right now. Michael, Darcy, and I will be doing a preview likely tomorrow, where like I'll give my final score prediction and stuff like that. But there's kind of my rough prediction right there. Jeffrey says Mahomes times Jackson Smith Najigba is going to be generational. Man, that would be fun. I hope so. We'll see, though. They might draft a tackle or an edge first. Mateo says, us Chiefs fans are so lucky that we have a GM that was able to trade an elite player and go to the Super Bowl next year. Yeah, and I've been one of the biggest critics of Brett Veach in the Chiefs, YouTube sphere, per se. But he absolutely deserves his flowers for this year. I mean, the Chiefs drafted Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, Sky Moore, Darian Kennard, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, Isaiah Pacheco, and pretty much all those guys, except for Darian Kennard, of course, are playing meaningful snaps for this team, and they have all year. Like Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, Isaiah Pacheco, Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, those are all guys that have started for this team this year as rookies. Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams were day 3 picks in the draft, and they both had interceptions in the AFC Championship. Like, that's insane, the draft that Brett Veach just had. We haven't talked about it enough yet because, we're focused on the Super Bowl and everything. But, yeah, Brett Veach deserves his flowers. Amani says, I don't know if it's just me, but do y'all think Mahomes and Hardman just don't get along? I think they get along, as far as people. As far as being on the same page, though, no. They never seem to be on the same page. Mahomes has a trust with MVS that if you watch Mahomes and MVS play together very closely, you see there's a chemistry, there's a connection. Like, they just kind of know what each other are going to do. They're on the same page. Travis Kelce is the ultimate example of that. Kadarius Toney walked in the door here in Kansas City, and immediately Patrick Mahomes started throwing back shoulder passes to him and all this stuff because he trusts Kadarius Toney. They're just on the same page. Him and McCole Hardman just have never been on the same page. A lot of it, I think, is because McCole just doesn't put in the effort. So, yeah. Jeffrey says, unpopular opinion, but Kennard Wiley, maybe in the future, definitely not this year. Kennard was terrible in the preseason, and I think there's a reason he hasn't played. But there was a game this year, I think it was the Jaguars, where Wiley went out, and Prince Tega-Wanaga had to step in, and he actually looked pretty damn good. I would have tried Prince Tega-Wanaga at right tackle going forward after that, but that's just me. Mateo says, do you think Sky Moore has a bigger role next year? I hope so. And I'm going to make a video about this in the offseason after all the Super Bowl festivities are over and stuff. But Sky Moore was kind of a disappointment this year. I understand there were a lot of receivers over him. I know he's a rookie. But when Tyreek Hill and McCole Hardman were rookies, they had those moments that made you go, wow, like these guys, like they have potential. Like there were those flashes that just you knew they were going to be good, or they had the potential to be good. We haven't really seen that from Sky Moore this year. We haven't had that moment with Sky Moore where it's like, wow, this guy is like a big piece of our future. Like wide receivers that don't really do much in their rookie year don't tend to just explode in their second year. It's just, that doesn't happen that much. Now, you can argue Sky Moore just hasn't gotten the opportunity, but I don't know, man. I'm a little bit concerned. We'll see, though. I mean, he gets open. Like whenever he plays and you watch him on tape, it looks like he gets open, but for whatever reason, just production isn't there. So I don't know. We'll see, man. We'll see. I really hope so. I'll have to dive deeper into that in the offseason. Eric says Mahomes and MVS had no chemistry until the playoffs. Well, no, they had a chemistry because, like, I remember there was a sequence in the Niners game, or no, it wasn't the Niners game. I keep saying it was the Niners game, but it was one of the regular season games where Mahomes chucked the deep ball to MVS, didn't work. He overthrew it, or MVS dropped it. One of the two things happened, and then Mahomes, the very next play, tried the exact same pass from the exact same route, and it connected because he was like, nah, I'm doing this again to MVS. I trust him to make this play. I I think the connection's been there. I think, and part of that is because MVS has played with an elite quarterback before, Aaron Rodgers. So there's that aspect that like he knows what the quarterback is going to do, and he gets it, and that it benefits MVS having played with an elite quarterback before. But him and Mahomes have chemistry. Like there's a trust there, and that's why I think MVS deserves to be on this team. You saw that in the playoffs. They had chemistry before the playoffs. It's just now being you're seeing it more in the playoffs, especially because like all the other receivers went down. So, he had no one else to go to as well. Jeffrey says, Pacheco, Super Bowl MVP, question mark. I hope so. His agent told him that. That'd be awesome if he got Super Bowl MVP. It would also mean the Chiefs won. Daryl says, I would disagree. Sky was really good in the second Chargers game. And yeah, I remember that second Chargers game. He had over 100 yards receiving, but that was the only time he did anything. Now maybe that helps the argument pro Sky more because when he got his opportunity, when other Chiefs receivers went down, he was productive. But again, we'll just have to see. The lack of production this year kind of has me second guessing because I really liked Sky Moore coming out of the draft. I liked the pick. I would have rather taken George Pickens. I think the Chiefs have the reasons for not taking George Pickens. I like Sky Moore coming out. But I'm a little bit discouraged. We'll see, though. We'll see. Like, yeah, the Chargers game was good, but that was really the only thing he did. You take away that Chargers game, he basically did nothing the entire season. But again, maybe with more opportunity next year, we'll see him kind of explode a little bit. But, I've seen the Chiefs try to get Sky Moore involved in a multitude of ways, and it just doesn't really work. They tried to give him those jet sweeps, and he doesn't have any yak ability, and he doesn't really have the field vision for those jet sweeps to be successful. He's not that kind of player. And then they try to put him on punt and kick returns, and he never even did that in college. So why is he doing it in the NFL? He came up big in the AFC Championship, yeah, but I mean we can't forget that most of this season Sky Moore was a disaster on special teams. We'll see what he does as a receiver, though. So all of a sudden, we went from me trying to wrap this thing up like 40 minutes in to being over an hour. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up there. You guys were great tonight. I appreciate all of you who stopped by and watched me. Guys, I love doing this, so please keep being engaged with me, and I will get to you. If you're watching this after the fact, not live, you're watching this after it was recorded, go ahead and leave your comments and questions down in the comments below, and I'll be sure to get to those too. We got a Super Bowl coming up this weekend. Michael Darcy and I plan on killing it tomorrow with content. And I'll probably have a couple more videos coming out tomorrow. I'm also going to be writing some more stuff for Arrowhead Addict. Check that out over the next couple of days. But yeah, that's all I got for this one, guys. So for those of you that are still watching, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. Make sure you check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com. And I will see you all in the next one. Go Chiefs!